Got fiberglass? I do. Welcome to Hack a Week.
So I've got all the goodies I need to put the fuel outlets on the bottom of the tank. Those goodies being this plate of aluminum, about a 1/4 inch thick, maybe a little bit more. That'll go in the bottom, laminated into the fiberglass. 2 holes will get drilled in this. They'll get tapped out to a 1/4 inch pipe thread, an NPT. It's called National Pipe Taper, and it's a tapered thread. You're probably pretty familiar with these if you've done stuff with air tools. It's the common size on air tools and hose fittings for air tools. Anyway, those will go into this plate like that, one there and one there. The hole will get drilled, it'll get tapped. I've got the tap for that. Then that will go in place with this in it. I'll plug this up with some wax so that it doesn't fill up with resin. And then I'll glass it all into place, laminate it all up on the bottom. Then I can punch that through, drill out that little bit of resin that might be on the top, and then insert this into this. This is an 1/8 inch NPT, so that'll go like that. That'll give me an angle off the bottom of the tank. Then I'll put on an 1/8 inch NPT to 1/4 inch hose barb, whatever you want to call it, right there, and that'll be the fuel line coming out. There will be 2 of these, one for the reserve, one for the main. The main will be have a little piece that sits up about this high in the tank somewhere, so that it takes fuel only to that level, and then there'll be a little bit of reserve. The reserve will just take it out of the bottom of the tank. Probably won't put a screen in because I'm going to put 2 small fuel filters in line on the thing. Those fuel lines will go in this area right here, and they will poke down like right about there and right about here, and this plate will reside in this area right here, and the 2 hoses will come out the bottom, and they'll come out and point that way and exit out right through that little opening you see right there. There were my fingers poking through. Hello! That's where the 2 fuel lines will go out. And then the petcocks will mount over here on the other side. I'm going to have 2 of them. So what I need to do is probably just put a piece of masking tape like right here and here. Then put the tank back on, mark the edge of the tank, and I'll have some alignment as to where that metal needs to go. So right here between the 2 coils, that's where the fuel lines need to exit, in that area. That should clear the spark plug wires, all the wiring, everything else. I'll figure out where they go left and right, but for right now that gives me the alignment of that away. I'll get the tank back on there with my little overfill hose. So now that I have that there, here's where the tape is. I can just put a little mark on the side of the tank. One there, one on the other side. And then take the tank back off and just bring that mark around each side. And here we go. This area right here. So that's where the fuel lines need to come out. Along that line somewhere. Ouch, I just got a piece of fiberglass on my finger. That stuff hurts. Okay, so the piece of metal will go right about there. Pretty much right in the middle. So I can just lay that there now. I guess just go ahead and trace it out, because I need to router that section out. It needs to get sunk into the foam. So that's where the metal goes. Once I router that out, I'll put a layer of fiberglass down in there, and then this will have those 2 1/4 inch NPT bushings in it. I can drop that in there, and then it will be flush with this surface, and then I can laminate over the whole thing. This is the metal insert that will go in here, and I've drilled 2 holes in it so that it will have something that will bind between this side of the fiberglass and this side of the fiberglass, just to help keep everything sandwiched tight to this aluminum. If there's fiberglass resin joining the 2 laminates, there's less chance of this delaminating along this line here. I've got this sanded, and before I laminate it all in here, I'm going to clean it really good with acetone to make really sure that it will make a good bond with the fiberglass and bed in there nicely. Now this needs to be routed out to the depth of this, maybe just a little bit more than the depth of this to compensate for the fiberglass. Perfect. I'm cutting a bevel on this edge now because the fiberglass will wrap underneath it easier. Fiberglass doesn't like to make sharp 90-degree bends all that well, and it just works out a little better if you give it a little bit of an angle to work with, if possible. Alright, we're ready to bed that in there now. First, let's get some fiberglass cut. I'm going to put a piece of mat down in the bottom of this to start out with. So that'll sit down in there. Let's trim that up just a little more. I'll put that in for a little extra strength. And we'll cut some fiberglass that will go in there, and then finish up with some mat on top. It's always good to cut your glass pieces before you mix the resin and you start doing anything, because that way you've got them all ready to go. You don't have to try doing that while your resin's sitting there in the pot going off and trying to harden up. Resin's mixed up. I have my fiberglass pieces all cut, laying here where I can pick them up easily. I've got some chopped glass filler material that's going to go in these holes once I bed this in, and we're ready to go. Let's get some resin on here. We'll get in that first piece of mat material, get that wet out really well. Now let's drop this piece in. I've got a piece of fiberglass cloth cut. Get some resin out here on this part of the fiber, or the foam. In fact, I think I'll move this a little. And wet that out until it looks clear. Now I got another piece that's going to go across here. Now we're ready for the piece of metal. Let's get some resin on that. Drop that in there. Paint a little resin on the top. And at this point, I'm going to take some of this resin. Let's get my brush cleaned out a little bit here. I'm going to pour it in here with the fiberglass chopped up fibers. Just pour just a little bit in there. Take a chopstick to mix it up with. These are really handy for mixing. Anytime you go eat Chinese, save your chopsticks. You can also buy them at Oriental food stores and such. Need just a little more resin in there. Just to make a nice thick paste. Don't want it to be too dry. Also don't want it to be too wet. I want it to be just right. Okay, let's get some of that in the holes. Use the other end here and just poke it in. I don't know what my dogs are barking at out there. They love to bark. They're dogs. They do that. Hey Fritz, what's up? Let's take that extra that we have left over and shove it off to the side here. And we'll use it around the edges to take up some of that space. And then we don't have to put as much resin in there. This will probably cure up and get pretty warm, but the piece of aluminum will actually absorb a lot of that heat. At least I hope so. All right, now time for the next piece of fiberglass mat. We'll put that right on top of here, just like that. I'm just going to pour a little bit of resin on here to expedite the process, because I really want to get this one good and wet around the edges as well. Just really work that resin down in there. Make sure there's a really good bond between the fiberglass that's in those holes and this piece of mat. Okay, one more layer. As you see, this one's a little bit bigger. Get a little bigger as we go here, kind of successively larger layers. I might run out of resin. I may have to mix up just a little bit more. One more piece over the whole works, just to seal it up really well and bind it with the surface, because the next layer that goes on will then blend in better. Looks like I might just barely make it here on the resin. Just made it. Once again, the perfect amount of resin. How about that? That's laying out really nice. I don't see any air bubbles going on. We've got the piece of metal bedded in there really, really well. Now later I can drill my holes right there and tap them out and put in the inserts, and that will be where the fuel comes out. Now we take a break and let this cure up. I've got some filler work to do along here in this channel. This is all going to be filled back in and faired in and then smoothed out. Then I can start laying glass on the top. The bottom is now all cured up and ready for more laminating. I filled in this little section here. I originally had this cut out for a little bit different position on the tank, but where it sits now, I had to fill that back in. I've also got to work out the piece that will come off the back at an angle like this, where the bolt will go through. Up front, I've still got to work out how the front will attach to the frame and keep it from lifting up. Got a couple ideas there, but I'm going to get some glass over the whole thing first. I need some filler material that's compatible with the foam. Bondo, good old, body filler type stuff. That's not going to work very well because it's polyester resin based. It will eat right into that EPS foam. I could use it over the top of a little fiberglass on there, but I might do that right in the very channel part. But in other places where I need to actually make a filler for the foam, baby powder, talc mixed with the resin, it'll thicken it up a little bit. And I mixed up some yesterday and let it cure overnight, and this is what it looks like when it's all dried. It's really hard stuff, and as you can see, it has a slump, like thick concrete, as in it won't just lay out.
it will stay, hold its shape, so you can put it on like a vertical surface or lay it into some areas, and it's almost like an epoxy bondo in a way. So you can mix this with epoxy resin, and it's a cheap filler material to actually extend how far the resin will go. And you can pick it up at just about any supermarket or drugstore. And what you want to look for is the stuff that's just talcum powder and nothing added. Not aloe, no softeners, no skin softeners, just baby powder. This has a little bit of fragrance added, but that's it, nothing else. It's just talc. So I'll mix up a little bit of resin, get that mixed with it, and then I can trowel it into some of the places I need to on that tank. I've got about a ½ ounce of resin hardener mixed up here. And get a good mix before you add anything to it, as a general rule. And then add about twice as much in volume of the talc as what you have in resin. And then as you mix it in, ooh, smells like a baby's arse in here, a clean baby's arse. As you mix it in, it'll look really strange, like it's not really mixing right away. And it takes a bit for it to get all totally mashed into the resin. And then as you go, it'll come out a little thinner than you think. So go ahead and add just about twice as much again. Because see, it's lofted all up when it's just in powder form. Once it gets mixed with the resin, that's when it starts to really thicken up. It's a really cheap filler material. Like I said, it's cheaper than micro balloons and other stuff. And you can just run to the supermarket and buy it. Now we're getting there. It's starting to get thick. You want it kind of like the other stuff I mixed up, that should stick readily to whatever it is you're mixing it up with. And it'll hold a peak. Could add just a little bit more. See how it wants to slump over in the cup? I don't know if you can see that, but it should hold a peak. Kind of like whipping up meringue for a meringue pie. So I'll go ahead and keep mixing here. Then we'll get some of this applied to some of the cracks and voids that are on that tank before I start glassing further. So the places I want to add it are along here in some of these voids and a few other places on the tank where there's some missing bits of foam. I'm just going to go ahead and put some right on there. Just use a stir stick to spread it around. Just pretty much filling in some gaps and cracks just to make it a little easier when I apply the resin later. The resin won't try to fill in all these gaps and cracks for me, which will just eat up resin. This stuff sands pretty easy because it's just talcum powder and resin, so it doesn't take much. It just turns to a white powder that smells like baby powder. Alright, we're ready to get some filler into this now. I'm just going to use Bondo because there's no foam exposed. Remember, you can't use Bondo on raw foam. It will eat it alive. Okay, I've got this stuff mixed up. It's really, really hot, so I got to work fast. The color of it tells you just about what the mix is. Because the hardener in this stuff is tinted red, so you can get an idea of just how much you have mixed with the filler material.
Okay, let's let that cure. Okay, it's at the green stage, which means it's still a little bit soft. If I use a Surform tool right now, it'll save me a whole lot of sanding later on. Because I can just use this and carefully plane across it and take off a lot of that upper layer that would take a long time to sand. I would be sanding on this for 20-30 minutes, whereas with this I can just do it quickly. But you have to do it while it's still green. There we go. That's pretty good. Just a couple little spots there and right in here to maybe add a little more. But before I do that, I'm going to get after it with the 80 grit block. It's been around since the beginning of this project and still holding up well. Looking good. You know, this is essentially like body work what I'm doing, and anytime you do that with filler material, always try to sand it with a flat block. Take your time and do it with a block and you'll come out with nice smooth work. So it looks like I've got a little bit there, a couple of places there, one little one down here, and that's it. Just one more pass with a little bit of Bondo. We'll be ready to start laying up glass on this. Are you excited yet? Okay, that's the last pass for that. We'll sand that smooth, and then comes the glass. There we go. All nice and smooth. I got the gas cap area taped off in preparation for the fiberglass, which is what we'll do next. Okay, here we go. Got about 6 ounces of resin mixed up here. First thing, always first thing, is to put a coat of resin down on whatever it is you want to apply the glass to. Just a light coat all over the whole thing. So we'll do that first. I'm going to stay away from this whole top section for now, with the resin and the fiberglass. These first layers are only going to go up to this edge. Alright, the whole tank has been coated on the top side anyway. Alright, keep the scissors handy, set the resin over here out of the way. Got a pretty good sized piece of fiberglass here, as you can see. I'm just going to drape it right over the whole thing, just try to center it the best I can. And just let it fall wherever it will. We'll get the resin out of the way. Now this isn't going to wrap around perfect, I'm going to have to do some cutting. That's just how it goes. It's kind of like doing a surfboard. What we're after doing is trying to wrap it around as much of the curvature as we can, and then you'll come back with some other layers and you'll be overlapping them as you go. And then wherever those layers overlap, later on we can sand it all smooth. Okay. Now that that's all laid down, make sure it smooths out really well. Now this top surface is pretty easy because it's, mostly flat. And the fiberglass will go around compound curves somewhat. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my hands for now with the gloves. And just get it on all the flat surfaces that I can. Get it stuck down. You'll see how it starts to soak up the resin all on its own. And we'll wrap it around the edge here a little bit. Simply because it wants to. You can see there's a pucker right there. That's where I'm going to have to make a cut. So I'll try to keep it on that contour that I had, the knee cut out. See if I can just follow that contour right down. Just like that. And then pull this up a little bit around it. And you see I've got a nice wrap around that curve right there. Do the same thing on the other side. Now I can pull this a little and get it to sneak around these corners a little bit. What happens is the fibers will kind of, instead of being like this, they'll shift a little like that. And that will allow you to pull it around some strange corners that you might not think you could. Right in this area is a good example. Let's keep going on this part. This wraps straight around over here. And this cobra eye section. And this is going to look so cool when it's all done. Just bring it right around the front. Right here it's starting to tuck up a little bit. And around here in the front I have that cutout for the steer tube. Go ahead and pull this all around. Okay, I've wrapped pretty much everything I can wrap without doing any cutting. Now it's time to get the scissors out, and we'll just make a relief cut right here, right where that fold is, right where it wants to fold. Let's go ahead and peel this side back. And take this portion, I'm going to cut that just a little bit further. If you see it pucker, that's where it needs to be cut. That's basically your rule of how to wrap it. Now in the next layer, of course, I can cover up these cut areas. Take care of these little puckers and weak points, because it is a split in the glass. We want the glass to be all nice and smooth. But as I go along, all these layers will overlap, and any place where there was a section that had a cut and a seam will get covered up by the next layer. Now because that's going up onto that that cobra eye sort of section, I'm going to cut this off. Right up through here. And go ahead and lay that out. Make sure that's pressed down well. Now it's time to get the resin back into play here and start wetting it out a little bit more with some resin. I'm just going to pour some right on here and start working it, because this resin is getting really hot sitting here in this pot. I got to get it on this before I waste it. Switched resin pots here. The last one went off. It's pretty much about $10 wasted, but well, shit happens. That's how it goes. Okay, now we'll wrap this around. And I'm going to cut some of this away. I don't need that much of an overlap on all this. The seam is right there, so I'm just going to cut it so that I've got about a ½ inch of overlap on that seam. Just let the rest go.
looks like I'm gonna have to do one more relief cut down here. I'll be doing these in different places as I lay up the different layers. I don't have to do it in the same spot every time. I can move that relief cut to a different spot. That is pretty much it, and now I've got to hustle it up and move along here and get some resin on the rest of this glass quickly so that I don't waste all of it. But you get the general idea. That's how the wrap is going to go on this whole thing, this whole process, and it's going to take a little time. I'm just going to keep at it until eventually we've got a gas tank. And then the fun part, of course, is going to be pouring in the acetone and watching all the foam go away, and we end up with a really cool fuel tank left over when we're all done. Cut this stuff away right now, just to help it wrap around the bottom a little better. Let it drape. Okay, the other side's wrapped. This is looking good. I'm just finishing up with the resin here, getting the rest of it out of the pot and onto the glass anywhere where it looks like it might need it. As long as you see that it's wet out really well everywhere, you're good to go. In fact, like I mentioned before, you only want enough resin on there to wet it out, and that's it. Ideally, that's the way to go. This is looking good. And finally, getting this baby fiberglassed. I'm pretty stoked. It's been a long road to get here. So before the resin goes off on the scissors, let's wipe those clean. Keep the scissors clean, because I was cutting right through some resined up fiberglass, so got to keep them clean. Okay, the first step is done. We're basically just going to keep repeating this until the whole thing's covered in about 4 layers of glass, maybe 5. And that will probably be enough. I might go a little more than that. We'll see just how it ends up. Progress. Made some good progress this week. We've got fiberglass going onto the gas tank. And next week we will see some of the wiring that's going on as I keep doing this fiberglass. This week, in between all of the fiberglassing I'm doing, each time I do this it has to, cure, and then I do a little sanding and I do some more glassing. And you've seen pretty much the basics of it, so I'm not going to bore you with every single step of the way. We'll jump to that in a couple episodes. Next episode will be all about the wiring, getting the rest of that instrument cluster on there and looking good, and finishing up all that stuff, signal lights, things like that. While all that's going on, in the background we'll be fiberglassing on the tank. The seat should be pretty straightforward and easy. That's just basically wrap the whole thing in a bunch of layers of glass and connect the necessary hardware onto the bottom so that it will go onto the bike. Then we'll move on to some other stuff on the bike, like the coolant overflow tank. I've got to come up with another one. My old one cracked. Got a great idea for that you are gonna love. And what else do we have to do? Not a whole lot. Hopefully in another maybe month I'll have this thing driving. I sure hope so, because it's been a 6-month long project already. So anyway, thanks for your patience on this fiberglassing portion. I know a lot of you have been chomping at the bit waiting to see this get started. So let's see, what are we on? Episode 11? 12 will be about wiring. So episode 13 might just be where we actually start to pour the acetone inside here and eat out the foam. That'll be exciting. All right, well, till next time.
Electric. Electric.
There's that piece of fiberglass in my thumb. Can you see that? That hurts. Let's pull that sucker out of there. Ow, that's better.